Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Reading Corner. Today, we're going to be talking about Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This was my first five-star read of the summer, and oh my gosh, there are so many things that I loved about this book. I loved the relationship between Bree and Archer and the build-up from friendship to their relationship, as well as the disability representation. We're going to unpack that a bit more as we go into my favorite quotes and scenes. Find somewhere comfortable, grab a drink, whether that be tea, coffee, soda, whatever. We're going to be here for a while. So let's get into it. Initially, I had heard about this book off YouTube and Instagram, and I heard about it through a YouTube channel called Hannah Evans, who's also known as Hannah's Library on Instagram. And she talked about how Archer's Voice was about this guy who couldn't speak. And he had this girlfriend and they got in a fight and she ran away from him. And he said, "Don't run away from me because I can't call after you." And I was immediately hooked. I was like, what is this? This means that there's disability representation. And also, why can't he speak? So I was really excited, but I put it off for a while just because that was all I knew about it. And then I was like, no, I keep thinking about it. I keep talking about it to friends of mine. Like, I need to read it. And so I read it and oh my God, it took me for a ride and I loved every single minute of it. As I mentioned in the beginning, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I would rate this spice level to be 4 out of 5, but use your own discretion when deciding the spice level of a book and whether it is too spicy for you. I would check the trigger warnings for this book. There was mention of gun violence and also sexual violence or assault. So definitely check out the other trigger warnings before starting this book. I'm going to give a brief summary of what this book is about. And then if you haven't read it and want to read it without any spoilers, feel free to leave and come back once you've read it. And then we can jump into my favorite scenes and quotes together. But I will give you a warning before the spoilers begin. So, a summary of this book. It is about a guy named Archer Hale, who we first meet him when he's 7 years old, and we don't quite know what's happening, but for some reason, his uncle Connor and his mom are telling him that he's leaving. And we don't really know anything else other than that his dad is not the best person. But that's all we know. And then we skip forward 16 years to another perspective from our main girl, Bree. And she has fled her hometown for a reason we don't know. But there is something that has caused her to leave her hometown and escape to this little town called Pelion, just to get away from whatever is troubling her. And of course, in Pelion, she meets Archer. And that is pretty much all I can tell you without spoiling anything. So just know, right off the bat, we have trauma from both main characters, Archer and Bree. And they kind of bond over that and, sharing that trauma. So now that we've gotten that small, quick summary out of the way, I'm going to leave you here if you don't want any spoilers. And if you do, and or if you've read the book before, let's continue. The first quote that I loved was this quote from Bree when she's helping a boy who got pushed down by the neighbor kids, and she's helping him pick up his books, and she says, "Keep up the reading. Girls love it." Do we ever? This just spoke to my soul. I mean, there's a reason there are Instagram reels, TikTok reels, everything in between about book boyfriends and, who would you choose if you could? Just, I loved it. Next two quotes that I loved happen in this one scene between Bree and Archer after Bree gets caught in the traps on Archer's property that were set up by his uncle, since his uncle that he stayed with after the accident was a little bit paranoid, and so he set up all these traps. She got caught in them, picking blackberries, may I add, which I still fantasize about that blackberry cobbler she was gonna make. Okay, and she's traumatized because she had a flashback to when her dad died and she was being held down by the man. And the traps just reminded her of that because she was caught and couldn't get away. And the way that Archer comforts her and the things he says, so good. So the first quote that I loved from the scene was, "I wasn't sure what to do, so I just sat there holding her as she cried. After a little while, I realized that I was rocking her, and my lips were on the top of her head. That's what my mom used to do when I got hurt or was sad about something." This just tugged at my heartstrings because he doesn't have a lot of memories of his mom since she died when he was very young. But the fact that he has a memory of her comforting him, and especially with the way that he grew up and the way that his father treated him and his mother, the fact that he's still holding on to these good memories from his childhood are just so good. The next quote that I love from the scene is when Bree has calmed down a little bit and has confessed to Archer that she feels bad. She did not try to stand up to her dad's murderer. She feels like she should have tried harder. She feels like she should have protected her dad instead of hiding like he told her to. And Archer comforts her and says, "You did fight, Bree. You survived. You fought to live. And you did. That's what your dad was telling you to do. Wouldn't you have done the same for someone you loved?" I loved this because this was something she needed. At this point, she's been feeling guilty all this time because she feels like she should have done more, right? She should have attacked her dad's murderer. She should have stood up to him. But she did because he was high and, wanted money and was going to get it one way or another. And when he didn't, as we found out, that's when he shot her dad. And so he would have done the same thing to her if she hadn't hid. And that was something that her dad knew. And so she stood up to the attacker by surviving, by doing what her dad said. The next quote that I loved was when Archer realizes that there are different types of pain. There's the pain that Bree went through with her dad's murder and her sexual assault. And then there's his pain with his mom and his dad being shot in front of him, and then his uncle shooting him in the throat. Those are two different types of pain. And he says, "Maybe there was no right or wrong, no black or white, only 1,000 shades of gray when it came to pain and what we each held ourselves responsible for." I loved this because it's acknowledging, again, like Archer just did, that there are different types of pain and that sometimes part of that pain comes from blaming ourselves for things we can't control. In this particular instance, we're talking about, Bree blaming herself for her dad's death and not standing up to the attacker. And also Archer is blaming himself for, what happened and both his parents dying, trying to protect him. And he has always felt guilt over that. But in this moment, he's realizing that not only are there different types of pain, but that part of that pain, as I said earlier, comes from the guilt that we attach ourselves to. The third quote that I loved was when she's telling Archer that he is a person. And I loved this quote because a lot of people with disabilities tend to be told that they're a burden, that they're not a person. And that's just not true. We are all people and we are not a burden. And so I just loved her acknowledging and telling him that he is a person because he feels so isolated that he doesn't feel like he's a person. And so him getting that confirmation that he is a person is really important. And it is important for people with disabilities because oftentimes, like Archer, we're made to feel so isolated and so different that we don't feel like we're people, and we are. And so that's why I love this quote from Bree saying, Archer, I grabbed his hands, bringing them to my heart as I had done earlier. You are a real person. You can live a life like other people do. Who told you you can't? It felt like my heart was cracking. The sweet, smart, gentle man thought so little of himself. He looked down, shaking his head, unable to respond to me because I held his hands against my chest. He had lived his life alone and isolated, with no one to talk to for so long. I love this because, as I said before, sometimes people with disabilities are made to think so little of themselves and like they're not real people. And having someone tell us that we do matter, that we are a person, is so important. And especially for Archer, because as we saw in this quote, and as we'll see in many more quotes and scenes, he doesn't feel like a person because he is so isolated. He hasn't talked to anyone in years because he's the only one in this town that knows how to speak sign language. The first time that he tries to go out on the town, it does not go well. People stare at him, they make fun of him. And so, because he's had such bad experience with people in the past, he doesn't want to risk it again and again and keep getting hurt. And so he just isolates himself. And those are a lot of the things that people with disabilities, as well as Archer, experience in the story. We also have this conversation of Archer being a real person with his cousin Travis, because Travis doesn't treat Archer very nicely, as we've seen throughout the book. He's the main person who has made fun of Archer and by extension isolated him. And at one point, Bree and Travis have this conversation, and Bree tells him, yes, he just wants to be treated like a normal person, Travis, and no one in this town seems to do that. They all just ignore him, pretend he doesn't exist. And I wish I could say that this is just something that happens in a book and that it was done for the plot line, but it's not something that just happens in this book or is done for the plot line. It is something that is experienced by people with disabilities a lot. People tend to ignore us. They don't speak to us. If we're with someone, they'll talk to the person that we're with. And it happens so often that I didn't even notice that it was happening to me until someone mentioned it to me. And they said, people don't really talk to you, do they? And I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I have friends, they talk to me, and they were like, yeah, but other people don't really acknowledge you. And it opened my eyes. And the next time I interacted with someone I didn't know, I saw it happen. I was with someone, and instead of acknowledging me and talking directly to me, they talked to the person next to me. And I was shocked because A, I had never seen this happen, and B, he was asking a question that pertained to me that I could answer. So I had to step in and say yes. But until I answered, he didn't talk to me. So again, I wish I could say that this is something that happens just in stories, that it's something that was made up by the author just for the story, but it's not. It's something that happens all the time to people with disabilities, unfortunately. Another thing that happens to people with disabilities is that people feel embarrassed for us and what we have to deal with and what we go through. Therefore, to have it happen in a story was amazing to me because it made me realize that this author was invested in portraying having a disability accurately. Archer talks to Bree about what he thought the first time they met, and he says, want to know the first thing I thought about you when we first met, other than how beautiful you were? You acted embarrassed in front of me, bashful, even blushed. about all the candy bars. It was the first time in my life anyone had acted embarrassed in front of me. People have acted embarrassed for me, but never because of something they'd done in front of me. It made me feel like a real person, Brie. It made me feel like something about me mattered. These three quotes that I talked about were really important and impactful to me because it portrayed a problem that people with disabilities face all the time, wanting to feel like they matter, wanting to be seen as a real person, not as a burden. And that was a really important exploration of Archer's story, was him being made to feel like a person, like he mattered throughout this journey. The next quote that I loved is when Archer comes to Bree during the thunderstorm and she says, "What are you doing here?" I asked. "You don't like thunderstorms," he answered. I tilted my head, confused. "You walked a mile in the rain because I don't like thunderstorms." He hesitated for a second, looking away, frowning slightly. Then he looked back at me and simply said, "Yes." He paused, his expression pained. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, but I just thought if I sat on your porch, you wouldn't be scared. You wouldn't be alone." I loved this quote because this man is fully ready to sit in the rain and be freezing cold, all because he wants to comfort her, even though he knows that she's mad at him. Something I loved about Bree and Archer's relationship is that they acknowledged when they hurt each other. And this was really important to me because oftentimes in books, as well as in real life, people don't acknowledge when they've hurt each other or when they've made a mistake. And that was something I loved about Fourth Wing too, and that I talked about in that favorite quotes and scenes video, is that Xaden and Violet, as well as Archer and Bree, were able to acknowledge when the other one made a mistake or when they hurt each other. This quote takes place during the thunderstorm scene, and Bree says, "You hurt me," I said, stepping back. Sadness was his expression, and he nodded, acknowledging that he knew he had. "Let me fix it," he said. "Please. I want to fix it. What can I do?" It didn't feel right, and so I left. That's what happened. I'm so sorry. I knew it wasn't right. I didn't want that. God. Shame filled his face as he looked down again. This confession is coming after Bree has learned kind of what happened at Guys' Night. She talked to Travis, and he mentioned that Archer went to the back room with another girl, and she was really confused. She didn't quite know, because all she remembered from that night was that Archer came home smelling like another girl's perfume. And so she was hurt by the fact that she thought he had been with another girl completely. And that really hurt her because she had fallen in love with him at this point. So I loved that they had this open communication, that they were able to talk about it and acknowledge that they hurt each other, because oftentimes that doesn't happen in a relationship. And that's what causes, in my opinion, a lot of problems, is miscommunication or not willing to acknowledge that something went wrong and that we want to fix it. Along the same vein of having a relationship where they acknowledge when they've hurt each other and when they've made a mistake, they also are able to meet each other where they're at. Travis had a conversation with Archer, and oh my God, every time they have a conversation, it just sets everything back because Travis just says things to Archer that don't need to be said and put doubts in his head that don't need to be said at all. But anyway, after one of these conversations, Archer confesses to Bree that as much as he's tried to be everything that she wants him to be, he is struggling and he's not ready. And that is something that I loved. They have an open, honest relationship. They can talk to each other about where they're at, and the other one doesn't try to push the other one or get all defensive about what's happening. They don't try to tell the other one, "Oh, I'm not pushing you," or "You can handle it." They acknowledge the other's concerns and meet them where they're at. And one example of this is when Archer says, "I've been thinking a lot these past couple of days, and I was trying to be what you want me to be, but it's a lot for me, Bree." He shook his head slightly. I hated that night. The noise, all the people, the fact that I can't talk. He was silent for a beat before meeting my eyes. I want to make you happy, more than anything, but he ran his hand over the top of his hair again. Archer, I made you feel like you were a project to me. I made you feel like you, just as you are, weren't enough. I looked down and then back up into his eyes. I'm so sorry. He grabbed my hands and then squeezed them and then let go. No, it's not your fault. I know you were trying to expand my world. I just need to do that as I'm ready, okay? And I don't know when I'll be ready. It might be a long time, Bree. I nodded, tears in my eyes. Okay. Not only did I love the scene for the open, honest communication that is being shown, but also because it brings up another important topic within the disability community, which is the fact that sometimes we are made to feel like projects, that there's something wrong with us, that we need to be fixed, and that we aren't enough as we are. And that's not true. We don't need to be fixed. We need to be helped. And there is a difference between being fixed and receiving help. When you're helping someone, you're offering something that will make their life easier, that will make it better. But when you're trying to fix them, you're trying to take away the problem. And with many, many disabilities, you're never going to be able to take that away. You're only going to be able to help. It should come from a place of, I love you, I care about you, I want to help you. Not, I feel bad for you, and I want to fix you. As I was skimming through the book for this video, I came across this quote that reminded me of Tangled at the very end, spoiler alert, where Eugene says, "You are my new dream." And Rapunzel responds with, "And you are mine." And, well, this wasn't the exact words of either Archer or Bree, and were neither of them dying, it still had the same sentiment, and for that reason, I fell in love with this quote. I didn't know enough to dream you, Bree, but somehow you came true anyway. How did that happen? He rubbed his nose along mine, pausing and then pulling back. Who read my mind and knew exactly what I wanted, even when I didn't? I breathed out, smiling around the lump in my throat. I feel the same way. You're my dream too, Archer, just as you are. See what I mean? Oh, that has the ending scene of Tangled written all over it, and I didn't catch on to it the first time, but I did the second time, and now I absolutely love it. It also reminds me of the song I Don't Know You Yet by Alexander 23, and I had never heard of this song before, but as soon as I did, I had to add it to my Archer's Voice playlist, which will be coming out soon. I'm still pinning down a couple of songs, but it is definitely coming out soon. And yes, that quote. Forever and always. Next one is another long one, but I just, anyway. So this is when he is asking Bree to stay with him for the first time, and he says, "What are you thinking about?" he asked, cocking one eyebrow. I smiled. "You," I said. "I was thinking about how I thank my lucky stars every day that I ended up here. Right here, with you." He smiled that sweet smile that made my stomach quiver and said, "Me too." Then he frowned and looked away. "What?" I asked, taking his chin and turning his face back to me. "Will you stay, Bree?" he asked. "Will you stay here with me?" He looked like a little boy in that moment, and I realized how much he needed me to tell him that I wouldn't go away like everyone else in his life had. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "Yes." I meant it with my whole heart. My life was here now. My life was this man, whatever that meant. I wasn't going anywhere. That quote hit hard because when you realize how many people have left his life and at such an early age, it makes you feel for him. And also, it makes you realize how important that question was for him and her response, because he's not used to people staying in his life. He hasn't had anyone since he was a teenager, because his mom died, his dad died, his uncle died, and then the uncle that he was staying with in his young childhood and then his teenagehood died when he was a young adult. And so that's 4 people in a very short amount of time. That means that he, in his mind, is used to people leaving, that people don't stay around for that long. And so it's really important for him that someone stays and is there for him. On a lighter note, one quote that I loved was when Archer comes to the diner for the first time and is ordering something to drink. And of course, he's using sign language. And Bree's friend Melanie says, "God, that's sexy," Melanie said. "It's like you two are talking dirty right out in the open." Archer smiled over at her and I laughed. I shook my head. "Maybe you two should learn sign language so you can join us," I grinned. They weren't talking dirty in the moment, but we know they've been known to talk dirty before in sign language. And I just love that scene. And especially her encouraging her friends to learn sign language. Another quote that stuck with me was something said by Bree, and she said, "Since I met him, it had occurred to me that it would probably be amazing what we could all see and hear if we just shut our mouths a little more and stop trying to constantly hear our own voice." How true that is. Sometimes when we have a conversation with someone, we're constantly thinking of the next thing to say, or we're not really listening. And so to have the ability or be forced to listen, truly listen to what someone has to say, can be so important, so eye-opening. And that only happens when we, to quote Aaron Burr from Hamilton, smile more and talk less. This next quote just cracked me up because this happens when Bree and Archer are going to the bar with Bree's hometown friends, and Bree says, "And stop giving my boyfriend evil glares. If you were paying more attention to anything else, you'd probably see the hot blonde girl eye licking you from the table next to us." He cleared his throat, and his expression sobered. "What? You don't think she's hot?" I asked, pointedly not looking in her direction, so she didn't know I was talking about her. "Oh, she's hot," he said, "and your boyfriend is seriously pissed. He's looking at me like he wants to kill me right now." Oh, this is when Protective Archer comes out. And when Protective Archer comes out, oh, I I had such a fun time reading on the protective scenes. I loved them. They were great. Um, and along that same line, so she has agreed to be friends with Jordan, and Archer doesn't know that they've agreed to just be friends. All he's noticed is that she keeps talking to Jordan privately, and she's like whispering in his ear and, doing all these things that lead Archer to believe that she, they're a little bit more than friends, or at least they used to be. And, he can't say anything. And that's something that irritates him, is that he can't say anything. He just has to sit and watch. And so this is what happens. He bent his head to my throat and kissed and licked it gently. Suddenly, I jumped slightly as he sucked at the skin on my neck, scraping his teeth up the now tender area. I brought my head forward, the lust fog clearing as I took in his challenging expression. I brought my hands up to my neck. "Did you just mark me on purpose?" She talks to Jordan afterwards because Archer is now left, right? He stormed out pissed because, all he can do is, as he's told her, sit and watch as, other men make advances on her. And she's like, are you serious? That's not what happened. And he, he's so pissed. All he's seeing is red. And so he just storms away. And so she catches up with Jordan and tells him what happened. And he says, "That tends to happen when men are insecure and needy. Go after your boyfriend." So we are now off to find Archer and tell him what's up and that we love him. Oh, this love confession is everything I need in life. He says, "I love you so much it hurts." And truly, he looked pained. I brought one hand to his cheek, and he closed his eyes for a beat before I brought my hand away. "It doesn't need to hurt," he breathed out. "It does, though. It does, because I'm afraid to love you. I'm afraid that you'll leave, and I'll go back to being alone again. Only it will be 100 times worse, because I'll know what I'm missing. I can't." He sucked in a shaky breath. I want to be able to love you more than I fear losing you, and I don't know how. Teach me, Bree. Please, teach me. Don't let me destroy this. He looked at me beseechingly, pain etched into every feature in his face. Loving another person always means opening yourself up for hurt. I don't want to lose you more than I already have either. But isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth giving it a chance? Like the previous quote about him asking her to stay with him, this one also hit hard because up until this point, all he's known is that love hurts because his dad, who supposedly loved his mom, hurt her and abused her. And then the two people that he loves, his mom and his uncle Connor / his dad, left. They died. And it hurt him. And so all he knows is that A, love hurts, and B, love is taken away. And so for him to accept that loss is also important, which is why I also enjoyed this quote. For context, this next quote happens way later in the story, after we've confessed our love and all that. It happens when Bree asks Archer, what made you decide to come back to Pelion after you left for 3 months? And he says, I was sitting in this small coffee shop a couple of days ago, and I saw this old man sitting at a table across from me. He looked so lonely, so sad. I was too. But it suddenly occurred to me that some people go through their whole lives never being loved or loving as deeply as I love you. There's always going to be the chance that I can lose you in this lifetime. There's nothing any of us can do about that possibility of loss. But in that moment, I decided I was more interested in focusing on the great privilege I've been given in having you at all. Knowing all the people that he's loved and lost, and this realization that he came to, makes it a fundamental arc in his character development, because he's experienced so much loss from the ones that he's loved. And so for him to accept that loss is a possibility, but loving is more important. I loved that character development. I know I'm jumping all over the place in terms of chronologically telling a story. However, screw it, because this is too important not to add. So Archer has unfortunately had another conversation with Travis, and Travis has put some bullshit into his brain about how can he support a family when he can't get a job and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, all right, Travis, shut up. People with disabilities can actually get a job, okay? They don't have to live on disability. Archer lets us get to his brain, and so he kind of freaks out and tells Bree, I have a small insurance policy that he left his uncle. It'll last me as long as I don't live to be 110. But that's it. His eyes moved away from me, back out the window. I sighed, my shoulders drooping. Archer, you'd get a job. Do something you like. You don't think people with disabilities of one kind or another have careers all the time? They do. This quote was significant to me because it breaks down a stereotype that is often assigned to people with disabilities. People often assume, like Archer unfortunately did because of his stupid conversation with Travis, that people with disabilities can't hold a job. And that is just not true. They can have a job, like Bree stated, and I think it's more common than people think it is. And so the fact that Mia Sheridan included this in her book, I was like, I absolutely love you. Thank you for breaking down the stereotype, because it's one we get so often, too often, and it drives me and others who are part of the disabled community bonkers. So thank you, Bree, for explaining that people with disabilities can actually have jobs and don't just have to sit at home and live on disability. Just in case you don't know what disability is money from the government to people with disabilities. Some people who, because of their disability, can't hold a job will live on disability. So just in case you didn't know what that was. So we talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about Archer being a real person and being treated like a real person. And that is that sometimes people with disabilities are made to feel like they're a burden, whether that be because someone told them they were, or they get the sense that, because of their disability, there are a lot of things that they need. And sometimes when you feel like there are a lot of things that you need in order to be a normal person, it can feel like you are a burden. And I've talked to multiple people that I know that have a disability, and the amount of times they've told me that they are told that by a person, that they're told that they're a burden to society, it breaks my heart. And I thankfully have never been told that or felt like that. But I know that other people with disabilities do. And so for this conversation to come up in this book was, again, really, really important, and was something that pushed the book to that 5-star level for me. This quote takes place after Bree has come back from identifying her father's killer, and she has dropped her phone in a puddle. And so she wasn't able to contact Archer, and he freaked out. He thought that someone he loved had died again. And so for him to cope with that, he just shut down and laid on his bed. She comes back, obviously, and he feels guilty that this is something that she has to deal with. And so he says, that's a big burden for someone, Bree, to feel like if you leave a person, their whole life is going to crumble to dust. That's what I've been out here thinking about. What a burden I might end up being for you. The pressure you'll feel just loving me. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm here, I whispered, brushing the hair off his forehead. I'm here, Archer. He brought his hands up. I'd almost forgotten what it feels like, he said, suddenly, looking lost like a little boy. My heart beat hollowly in my chest, breaking for the man I loved, so petrified of loss that his mind had checked out so he could deal with his agonizing fear. Oh, Archer. I stifled a sob. The last thing he needed right now was for me to lose it. What feels like? I whispered. To be completely alone. You're not, baby. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. He looked at me then and, finally, smiled a sad smile. This is that burden I was talking about, Bree. This is what the burden of loving me looks like. Loving you isn't a burden. Loving you is an honor and a joy, Archer. Being made to feel like you don't belong or are a burden to society is what I imagine to be the most horrible feeling. And I say imagine because, again, I've never experienced it, but I know other people who have been told that. And I can't imagine how that would make you feel. So for him to know that he's not a burden is super, super important. And I just love that because it again confronted something that is a really important topic within the disability community. I had to take a moment after that one because that last quote was so heavy and yet such an important thing to address. But here we go. So this next quote is the one that pulled me into reading the story and made me want to read it. And that is when she is mad at him for being away for 3 months. And so she gets out of the car and starts walking, but he can't call after her. And so in order for him to talk to her, he has to catch up to her and make her face him so that he can actually talk to her. And he says, don't run from me, I said. I can't call to you. Please don't run from me. And then Bree asks him, was there another woman? And he says, there has only ever been you. There will only ever be you. There's nothing to find out. What I know is that you walked through my gate that day and I lost my heart. but not because it could have been any girl, because it was you. I lost my heart to you. And Bree, in case you're wondering, I don't ever want it back. That whole scene, it was so emotional. It definitely pulled at my heartstrings, and that I think that'll forever be one of my favorite quotes and conversations that they've had. Okay, going back into the heavy topics for a minute is what Archer learned while he was gone. He said, I realized that people's reactions had more to do with them, more to do with who they were, than anything about me. It was like, well, the lightning hit me, Bree. That is such an important realization, and one that I hope that we all have at one point, because I think, at least for me personally, when I had that realization, it made things easier and it helped me accept it more. It helped me accept that, people are going to stare, people are going to feel bad. Most of the time, your interactions with people when you have a disability, I hope, and in my case, are good. But, you do have those few that are bad. And while I hope they're few and far between, they do happen. And acknowledging that it's not about you, it's about how they were raised, doesn't make it better, but sometimes it can make you less angry, and maybe just a little bit better, because I think when you're angry, things seem worse. But when you realize that it's not your fault, and it comes from a place of ignorance most of the time, that can also help, because that means that you can do something about it. You can educate people on it. And the more educated people there are on different types of disabilities, the better we all are. Because I think that is honestly where a lot of this miscommunication and, bad reactions and interactions come from, is a lack of understanding. So if we can understand that it's because of the way that they were brought up and the way that they learn things, that gives us something to do. And I think sometimes that feeling of helplessness is what causes us to be angry a lot of the time. Feeling helpless, like you can't do anything, is the most frustrating and angering feeling that I can think of. And so when you know that there's some way that you can help alleviate the situation, sometimes that can make it feel better and make it less aggravating. Okay. Again, we're jumping back and forth between heavy stuff and then lighthearted stuff, but Archer made this friend while he was away, and he went to his friends for Christmas, and his friend had a daughter, and this friend, who he also works with, told his daughter, hey, this guy can't really, doesn't really speak, but treat him nicely, he knows sign language. And she asks Archer what the word in sign language is for love. And instead of telling her, the actual sign language, he tells her Bree, because that's what love means to him. And that brought up another thing that I love. And that is that he realized that love is a concept. I'm just going to read these two quotes to you. He invited me to his home for Christmas dinner, and his little girl learned a few signs before I got there, and I taught her a few more. I smiled, thinking of little Claudia. She asked me the sign for love, and I spelled out your name. Bree. I think love is a concept, and each person has an individual word for what sums it up for them. My word for love is Bree. I love that he discovered that love is a concept, because it is so true. Love can mean so many different things to so many different people. Love can be brotherly love, sisterly love, motherly love, fatherly love. It can be romantic love. It can mean anything we want it to mean. And I just think that is such a powerful concept, to know that love can be anything we choose to make it. Speaking of when he came back, they had sex when he came back, and this was something that I thought was weird that I noticed, but also something I was glad that I noticed, and something I'm glad was commented on, and that was how their sex changed throughout the story. And he says, all the times I had made love to her before, my head had always screamed, mine, desperately. But now it felt like a gentle acknowledgement, a comforting truth. Mine, mine, always mine. And I love that this has been a holistic shift for him. You know, first it was his way of thinking and the way that he thought of himself. And then it was how he thought of other people and how he loved other people. And this one quote just encapsulates that change. And so that was why appreciated that quote and really enjoyed reading it. The next quote is also demonstrating that change. And he says, someday, I said, when we're old and gray, I'm going to look at you lying in bed beside me, just like this. And I'm going to look into your eyes and know that it's only ever been you. This quote again demonstrates his serenity and his acceptance and his calmness about this new chapter in his life, and that he's come to terms with everything that has been troubling him. The fact that he took a bullet for her, oh my God, I was not expecting that at all. And when he did, I thought he died. Like, I was very emotional. I almost cried. Okay. Things got pulled in my heart when we were talking about how she can't run from him because he can't ever call after her. But when I thought he died, oh my God, that was a whole nother level of tugging my heartstrings and almost making me cry. I don't ever really cry over things in books, but this one almost had me crying. I saw that it was a gun. He brought it up and aimed it at it, and aimed it straight at me. I saw a bright flash of fire as Archer threw his body in front of mine, slamming back into me as we both went down, me falling on the floor just behind Archer. Hang on, baby. Hang on. I love you, Archer. I love you. Don't you dare leave me now. No, I screamed, pulling Archer close to me. No. No. I rocked him some more, putting my face right next to his, feeling his rough cheek against my own, and whispering to him again, don't you leave me. I need you. Don't you leave me. But Archer didn't hear me. He was already gone. This is why I thought he died. And then we had the freaking poem. And it says, you brought the silence, the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, because it was where you were, and now you've taken it away. And all the noises, all the sounds in the world, aren't loud enough to pierce my broken heart. I look up at the stars, endless and forever, and whisper, come back to me, come back to me, come back to me. Legit thought that was eulogy, and I was not okay. I was not okay. But the fact that he woke up during a thunderstorm and that he has forever changed her perspective on thunderstorms was just so good. She says, outside, the rain had just begun to fall, and I heard a boom of thunder in the distance. I wasn't afraid, though. When a thunderstorm comes, I had told him, I'll think of you, not anything other than you. And I always did. Always. But the fact that her view of thunderstorms was forever changed by him, oh, so good. And this was another reason that I thought he had died, was because she kept talking about him in the past tense. But then he woke up, and I was like, oh my God, thank God. He looked at me for several minutes before he brought his hands away from mine and signed slowly, his fingers moving stiffly. I'm back for you. That is so cute. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. The last scene in this book, actually, it's not the last scene, it's the second to last scene. But the final chapter in this book before the epilogue. I just have to read the scene in its entirety. So Archer didn't die. He has lived and is now the mayor of Pelion, and he has to give basically the inaugural address. And this is what he says. "Thank you all for coming," he said, pausing and looking around. "The land this town is on has been in my family for a long, long time, and I intend to run it as each Hale has run it before me, with the knowledge and belief that each person who lives here matters, that each of you gets a vote on what happens and doesn't happen in Pelion." He looked around pointedly at all the faces in the crowd before continuing. "After all, Pelion is not the land it sits on, but the people who walk its streets and run its shops and live and love in its homes." He paused again. "I think you'll find me an agreeable landlord, and I've been told I'm a good listener." The crowd laughed softly, and Archer looked shy for a second, looking down before continuing. "There will be a vote tonight about the development slated for this town, and I know some of you are very passionate about getting to that. But I'd like everyone to know that if ever in the future any of you have concerns or suggestions, my door will always be open." The crowd kept watching him, smiling and nodding with approval, finding other eyes and nodding at them as well. Finally, Archer looked out at the crowd, and the gentle, quiet murmuring ceased completely as his eyes found mine. I smiled at him encouragingly, but he just kept gazing at me for a few seconds before bringing his hands up again. "I'm here for you. I'm here because of you. I'm here because you saw me, not just with your eyes, but with your heart. I'm here because you wanted—" Oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional. "I'm here because you wanted to know what I had to say, and because you were right. Everyone does need friends." I laughed softly, wiping a tear off my cheek. Archer kept gazing at me, his eyes filled with love. "I'm here because of you," he said, "and I'll always be here because of you." I loved this double entendre, this double meaning, because he is here because of them, right? Because they believed in him, but also because of Bree. And he communicates that by looking at her through this whole entire part of his speech. And I love this double entendre. And he talked a lot about in his speech that voices matter. And I found that really important because that's staying true to who he is and what he's learned. And something that I've learned through making my own speeches for speech and debate is that somehow, some way, in every speech that you make, part of what you know is always intertwined. And so to have this part intertwined, I thought was so important. And it also means that the lessons that he learned and the character development that he went through has stuck with him and will stick with him. And it was just, it was so good. And when he, talked about how all the voices matter, oh, that is just so, so good. All right, back to this speech that makes me emotional, even though A, he's not my mayor, and second of all, I don't even live here. So, oh my God. I heaved out a big breath, tears running unabashedly down my cheeks now. Archer smiled gently at me and then looked back around at the crowd. "Thank you again for being here, for your support. I look forward to getting to know you all a lot better," he finished. So, so good. And I didn't even talk about this at first, but oh my God, the fact that people have started learning sign language is just fantastic. Norm has learned a couple of signs and it was just great. He, before Archer's speech, was like, "Knock him dead." And I love that he figured out the sign for that. It was great. And this next part, the fact that they gave him a standing ovation, I was like, yes, okay, great. It was just so important to his journey, I think, because to him, it was a visual representation of people accepting him, which he hadn't experienced before. He's told Bree what happened when he went out the first time, and how people stared at him and it made him uncomfortable, and they weren't really very nice to him. And so for him to have this visual representation of people being nice to him was just, oh being nice to him and accepting him was really important, and it made my heart all warm and fuzzy, and I was emotional. The epilogue. First of all, I could just read that whole entire scene to you like I just did with the speech, but I won't. But the epilogue takes place 5 years after the last chapter. They're married, they have kids. It's fantastic. But one of the things that stuck out to me was this quote, and he says, "She had told me my voice mattered, and her love had made me believe it might be true. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person who's willing to listen to your heart, to be the sound no one else has ever tried to hear." As trivial as that may sound, or as book happy as that may sound, it is so true. Sometimes all you need is that one person who believes in you, who is, for all intents and purposes, your Brie, who tells you that you matter and that you aren't a burden. And sometimes that's all it takes, is that one person who believes in you. And sometimes I think we shortchange how much that matters. I could have stopped the story right there. Absolutely. That could have been the ending line, and I would have been so happy. But no, she had to give us more to be emotional over. Oh my God. This epilogue. Why? The way their sons have learned to communicate is so good. First of all, I mean, of course they know sign language, but just their unique way of communicating. I clapped my hands 3 times, getting their attention. They ran to me, and I let them believe they knocked me over, going down on my back on the grass as they tackled me, laughing again, the beautiful sound ringing out through our property. I sat up, bringing the boys with me. Which one of you is going to help me with the construction today? Because they're making this addition to the house for their new sibling, and it's so good. Me, they both signed together. It's just, this communication is so wholesome, and I can't. Then the fact that because he didn't have a good relationship with his own brother Travis, he makes the kids say this little saying, oh my God, brothers to the end. And they signed along just after me, looking solemn and serious. So good. And something else that made it even better was I looked in the dedication at the beginning of the book, and that's something that she says to her boys, the author, and it just made it so much more impactful to know that she included a bit of what she has in her own life in a story. It's just so good. The last quote that I have for you before we move on to scenes is this one, and it is just so cute. I grabbed her hand and pulled her into my arms, kissing her lips and falling in love with her, just like I still did 1,000 times a day. That evening, 4 years ago, in the Pelion church, when Bree walked down the candlelit aisle toward me on Norm's arm, taking my breath away, I had vowed that I'd love her forever, only her, and I meant it, to the depths of my soul. And even now, even with all of life's craziness and noise, even with my own job and Bree's thriving catering business, each night before I fell asleep, I made it a point to turn to my wife and silently say, "Only you, only ever you." And our love slips quietly around me, holding me, anchoring me, reminding me that the loudest words are the ones we live. Oh my God. It's a twist on the saying, actions speak louder than words. And it's so true. You have to follow through in order for your actions and your words to mean anything. And and it was so impactful to me reading that, knowing the context. And that's something that I enjoyed, that not only was their advice for the context of the story, but also advice that is meaningful and can be applied in real life, because as I talked about, books are a way of escape, and that's why we enjoy them. But sometimes communicating those important lessons through story are also important and mean a lot. Moving on to scenes that I just want to talk about. Backing up to the beginning of the story, because we're starting chronologically all over again. The almond joy bouquet that he gave her after she cut his hair is just so cute. I can't. Okay, I'll admit that I did this. I got an almond joy bar after reading this story because I had never had one and I wanted to know what they taste like. And I mean, it's Bree's thing. It's not my thing. I didn't really enjoy it, but it's Bree's thing. And I just find it so cute that he made a whole entire bouquet of almond joys. I just have to comment on this. I did not know that you could be so freaking turned on by a haircut. Like, who knew? I didn't know, but I figured it out after the scene. So, whatever. I'll leave it at that. Also, I have the ebook version, so I got Archer's point of view from chapter 15. The things I have bulleted. Let's just go down the list. First of all, this is such a, like, okay, I get that they're like 23 and something, but this is such a freaking teenage romance. He was like so excited to see her. I couldn't even. I was like, oh my God, this is such a teenage romance. This feeling of a teenage romance at the age of like 20 something was even more evident in the fact that he was clueless and also scared, because he said Bree seemed to be breathing harder than she'd been before too, and I wondered if she was feeling something even vaguely similar to what I was feeling. Was it even possible? How would I know? What was a man meant to do in a situation like this? Was I supposed to ask her or just follow my instincts? Always ask permission. Always ask for consent. Thank you. But my instincts scared and confused me. I wanted to describe all the ways I desired her by using my fingers to write the thoughts on her skin. This one was, I found it cute, but then I found it even more endearing after I read the bonus epilogue in the paperback version. I was like, oh my God, the fact that you wanted to do this and then actually did it once you were married. Oh, so cute. And then he said, I'd found a certain peace with the way I lived my life, an acceptance of who I was and who I'd always be. But Bree's presence had suddenly shifted everything I thought I knew, thought I wanted. And I thought that maybe I would try again with Bree, that maybe, just maybe, I could learn not to be so awkward with her, that I could learn how to be a man who could win a girl like Bree, and that not trying at all was a different sort of drowning. And I didn't want to drown. I didn't. I wanted to live. I turned over and started back, my arms cutting through the waters. I pushed myself forward, heading to shore, heading toward home. These last two parts of Archer's point of view were just something that cemented in my heart of hearts that this was a 5-star read for me. Did I need them to know that this was a 5-star read? No. But again, it just cemented it for me. Him talking about how he has accepted that this was his life is really important to me, because it made me realize that there is an importance in acceptance, because you're not going to overcome everything in a disability. As hard as you try, there are always going to be things with your disability that you can't overcome, that are just going to be a part of you. And I think you have more peace when you accept that. And I hope at some point you can learn to accept it. And I know it's hard, but I think it's important. And so for a character in a book to show that acceptance was really special to me, and I think can could be really impactful for someone who is struggling with that. So I'm glad she included that. The very last part about him swimming home. Again, this comes with a double entendre, okay? Yes, he's swimming back to his house. Fantastic. But he views Bree as his home, as his love, and just that double meaning was so good and made my heart warm and fuzzy inside. This one, I remember I hated Travis, okay? It does not come across in this video how much I hate Travis. But like, if you read the whole story, I think we can all agree that Travis is like one of the worst. The worst is Victoria. But Travis, because we see him the most, okay? We know that Victoria is the worst just because we've heard about her actions and what she did and the fact that she prevented Archer from getting his voice back. So we can all agree she's the worst. But Travis, the hate I have for Travis in Archer's voice is like second to none. I remember telling my friend, Ritika, I have never wanted someone to get slapped so fucking badly in my life. Like, I was hoping and praying that he would get slapped. I was annoyed with him, okay? I didn't like him. And then he took Archer to the club for guys' night, and I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I need you to get slapped, like right here, right now. Like, I was just waiting for that to happen. And so when Bree finally did, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, the satisfaction. And while we're talking about Travis getting slapped, Archer. Archer slapping him. I forgot this even happened until I was going back through. But oh my God, this is another like protective Archer moment. And oh my God, it was so good. So basically, there is this parade to honor Archer's dad, and Bree got this call from the police saying, hey, like, we think we've got this guy who matches your description of the guy who killed your dad. Like, can you come in and verify? So she is kind of having a day, okay? She's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I gotta talk to Archer. And she sees him across the street, and she is like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to him. Plus, he also needs comfort right now because like this is his dad's ceremony. And like he needs all the comfort right now. Except at this point, she doesn't know the whole story, so she thinks it's a ceremony honoring his uncle who shot him. And so she's like, he needs all the comfort right now because like this man is terrible. I don't know why they're celebrating him, whatever. But I mean, regardless of whether she thinks it's a ceremony for his dad or his uncle, like he's gonna need the support when they do the ceremony. So whatever, she's gonna go talk to him. Unfortunately, Travis had overheard the conversation with the policeman, and he was like, look, like, I overheard this conversation, like, if you need anything. And she's still pissed at Travis because of the whole strip club thing. So she's mad, okay? But he like grabs into her arm and is like, if you need anything. And she's like, let me go. I don't want to talk to you. Let me go. And he's like, no, like, genuinely, seriously, like, I'm here for you. And she's like, let me go. And he like won't let go. And he's like, no, like, no, I heard what happened. Like, if you need me, I'm here. And she's like, let me go. And she finally rips out of his grasp and turns around to see Archer, and she's like, before I can do anything, he's hit him across the face. And I was like, okay, sir, thank you. If someone tells you to let them go, you let them go. I'm sorry. I don't care if you think that holding them there against their will is a good idea because you think that's what they need right now. No, thank you. So for him to get slapped twice, I was just like, absolutely. Actually, now that I think about it, Bree did know that it was Archer's dad. because she stopped the two of them fighting on the street by saying, please stop, you're brothers. So she does know. I forgot about that. Anyway, moving on. This is so small and yet it is so cute. The fact that Bree likes folded chips, like only the folded ones, and Archer noticed and went through several bags of chips to find them all. That's ridiculous, but cute. And I was just like, oh my God, you're so in love. You've got it bad. But it was cute. The next one, driving lessons. Oh my God, driving lessons. First of all, can we just talk about awkward? So we taught him how to drive, and then we distracted him, then got caught by Travis while we were in the middle of having a time, okay? And I was like, this is awkward. This was in the middle of the story, so the town, hasn't decided to learn sign language yet. And so Bree is like, sure, I'll drive Archer home, whatever. And Archer signs to Travis that he's an asshole. And Bree's like, okay. And Travis was like, what did he say? And she's like, he said sure. And then they just left. And then they just cracked up laughing because that is definitely not what he said. And that's their own little secret. Something else that I loved was being honest about the relationship. We didn't pretend that it was going to be all sunshine and rainbows, and we didn't ignore the fact that this was going to be hard, because it's going to be hard. And we saw this as she was chasing after Archer after the whole bar scene, to tell him that she loves him, and her friend's like, you know what you've gotten yourself into, right? And she's like, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to deal with this disability. And she was like, okay, not just the disability, you're also gonna have to deal with the emotional damage from his childhood. And the fact that his uncle shot him, the two people that he loves died, and then of course his vocal cords, the abusive household that he grew up in, you're gonna have to deal with that. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that the author acknowledged how hard this was going to be, and that we didn't sugarcoat things. We didn't make them all sunshine and rainbows. Like, this is going to be hard, and this is going to require work, because not only is it indicative of a real relationship, but it honestly and truly shows what dating somebody with a disability could be like. I wanted to add some context here and say that not only are you dealing with the struggles of having a disability, but you're also struggling with external factors such as how they grew up. On to lighter things. I swear, I have this back and forth thing where we go from dark to light. It's great. Making lists. Oh my God. They just make lists for everything, and it's really, really cute. So on her way to the police station to verify that they found the right guy who is her dad's killer, she texts Archer because her friend got him a phone, and they just make lists. I'm sorry. They have a happy list and a gross out list and a calm list and probably several other lists that I'm missing, but it was so, so cute. Also, side note, can we talk about the fact that her, in probably 2 days of having a phone, has learned how to run and text at the same time? I can't even do that. Like, texting and running at the same time. Like, who are you? Hello? So we talked about this earlier when we talked about the fact that they have their secret language, and Melanie was like, oh my God, that's so sexy. But when Archer came to the diner for the first time, Bree realizes how big of an accomplishment this is and how brave he was, which again goes into how much he's grown and meeting him where he's at. But she realizes that after something this stressful, that he might want something to comfort him. So she says, chocolate milk with a twisty straw. The fact that he still does this as like a 23-year-old grown man is just endearing, and I appreciate that, because her realizing, that this is difficult for him and how do we make this easier for him was so cute. He just took a coffee, but still. The fact that she was willing to do that was really, really cute. Speaking of acts of courage, she acknowledged all of them. She acknowledged, coming to the diner and going out for guys' night. And I that was something I really appreciated, was acknowledging even the smallest of things when we realized that even though we might consider them small, how significant they were to him. There is this correction TikTok going around that says, well, now I know that a guy is in love with me if he spins me around. And it's all the Disney princes who pick up their bride or princess or whoever and spin them around. So Prince Charming, Adam slash the Beast, all those people. And so I noticed it in a scene from the diner that Archer like picks her up and spins her around. So I looked up how many times he spun her around. 8 times. 8 times he picked her up and spun her around. This man. And especially since the last time he did it, he literally was still bandaged from getting shot. Like, okay, well, he clearly loves her then, for going by that metric. Not that we didn't know before. The whole town has learned sign language for him. Oh my God. Like, the dedication of these people and the love that they have for him once they get to know him, that just made my heart melt. I was like, you guys all learn sign language for this one guy. Oh my God. Oh, so good. Last but not least, and some of you may not know this, whether because this is only in the paperback version, and I only got my hands on the paperback version 2 weeks ago, when I went to the Barnes and Noble store and was able to look at a paperback copy. The bonus epilogue. This is only in the paperback copy. Oh my God, that bonus epilogue. So in this bonus epilogue, we learn that the boys have gone to stay with Norm and Maggie for Archer's birthday, so that Bree and Archer can have alone time, because we're adults and that's all we want in life. So that was just really cute. I was like, the fact that these two have just adopted these children, it's cute. I full on started laughing in the store. I'm pretty sure people looked at me, whatever. I full on laughed. They were laying by the fire, and she says, the same thing that got this baby in will get it out. You know that, right? And he's like, okay. They did it. They had sex, and she was right. That got the labor moving, because she was supposed to give birth in 3 days. We had it a few hours later. Unfortunately, there is a huge snowstorm that happens on his birthday. The fun times of being born in December. And so no one can get to their house, first of all. Also, they have no electricity now. The power has disappeared. They have to deliver this baby like old style, like candles, the whole 9 yards. Like, I don't know how to do this. I've only delivered like puppies. Like, I don't know how to do this. And she's like, I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out. We've got this. We deliver this baby by candlelight. Remember how I mentioned before that in Archer's point of view for chapter 15, he wanted to communicate to her through like tapping on her skin? He did that during this delivery, because he's like, I can't like communicate with my hands. I've got to get this baby out. So like, we're gonna have to do this by me just riding on your leg. And it was so cute. She also mentioned that that's what they do when they have sex. So, just bring it full circle. But it was so cute. I was like, you found a way to communicate, even though you don't have the use of your hands right now. She shares the same birthday as Archer by 7 minutes. So she and Archer are both December 2nd babies. I know this was a long one, and I hope you enjoyed. Those are all my favorite quotes and scenes from Archer's voice. At a time. I still think about that, but constantly. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.